She walked into the glittering billionaire gala with confidence, unaware that whispers would soon turn into cruel laughter. In a room filled with wealth and power, one white CEO decided to make her the target, mocking not her business, but her very identity. The crowd watched, some silent, some smirking, as the insult cut deep. But what no one realized was that her silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. And before the night was over, a $7.9 billion decision would flip the entire room upside down. The question is, who truly walked away humiliated? For years, Danielle Carter had fought her way into the elite circle of billionaires, a world not built for women like her. A self-made black CEO, she had risen from a modest childhood to leading one of the fastest-growing tech empires in the world. Every invitation to those exclusive galas wasn't just about champagne and chandeliers. It was proof that she had earned her place, no matter how many tried to push her out. The evening was dazzling. Crystal lights reflected off marble floors. A string quartet played softly in the background, and servers in white gloves floated through the crowd with trays of golden flutes. Danielle carried herself with quiet elegance, exchanging polite smiles, aware that every eye seemed to follow her. She knew she was being watched, not for her success, but for who she was. Among the guests, the familiar faces of old money and powerful corporations mingled. Many greeted her with stiff courtesy, others with veiled dismissiveness. But Danielle had grown used to walking into spaces where she was underestimated. She wore her resilience like armor. Yet, beneath the surface of glamour, there was an unspoken tension. Not everyone welcomed her rise to power. And that night, as conversations flowed and deals were whispered over clinking glasses, one woman in particular, the white CEO of a competing firm, saw Danielle not as an equal, but as a target. What began as a simple evening of networking was about to spiral into a public display that no one in that room would ever forget.
If you believe in justice, hit like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss a story that matters.
Danielle had learned long ago that being the only black woman in a room full of billionaires meant she carried more than just her company's reputation. She carried centuries of doubt cast upon people who looked like her. Yet she never let it show. She walked with poise, greeted with warmth, and listened with intent. That night, she moved gracefully through the gala, making connections that would strengthen her business empire. But not everyone was pleased to see her thrive. At the far side of the ballroom, Eleanor Whitmore, the white CEO of one of the largest legacy corporations, watched Danielle with thinly veiled disdain. Eleanor had inherited her empire, passed down through generations of wealth and privilege. To her, Danielle represented something she couldn't control: change. It began subtly. A pointed comment slipped into a conversation Danielle wasn't supposed to overhear. Some of us didn't have to climb out of the gutter to get here. A few nearby guests chuckled uneasily, unsure whether to laugh or look away. Danielle kept her composure, but the sting was sharp. She turned, meeting Eleanor's eyes, and for a brief moment, silence pressed between them. The whispers grew bolder as the night went on. Eleanor made remarks about new money and outsiders who don't quite fit in. Each one louder, each one sharper, until the room began to shift. Some guests smirked, enjoying the spectacle. Others looked down at their glasses, unwilling to challenge the cruelty unraveling before them. Danielle stood at the center of it all, her dignity tested under the golden lights. Then came the breaking point. Eleanor raised her glass in a mock toast, her voice carrying above the music. To those who think a few lucky breaks can buy them a seat at the table, may they remember that class isn't measured in dollars. The laughter that followed wasn't kind. It was cutting, echoing through the marble hall. Danielle felt the weight of every eye. The humiliation was meant to crush her, to remind her of boundaries she was never supposed to cross. But behind her calm expression, something else stirred. She wasn't going to let this night end on Eleanor's terms. What Eleanor mistook for silence was calculation. Danielle had more power than anyone in that room could imagine, and soon the entire gala would see it. The laughter still hung in the air when Danielle slowly set her champagne glass down. She didn't flinch. She didn't raise her voice. Instead, She moved with deliberate calm, her presence commanding attention without a single word. The string quartet's melody wavered, as if even the music sensed the tension. All eyes followed her as she stepped forward, her heels clicking against the marble floor like a countdown. She stopped just a few feet from Eleanor. The mocking smile on Eleanor's face widened, certain she had silenced her rival. But Danielle's silence was not surrender. It was strategy. With the poise of a leader who had built an empire with her own hands, Danielle addressed the crowd. Her voice was steady, cutting through the whispers. Some of you measure power in inheritance. I measure it in results, and results don't lie. Then, without warning, she pulled out her phone. A single message, already drafted, hovered on her screen. With one tap, it was sent. The room didn't yet understand what had happened, but Eleanor did. Her phone buzzed immediately. A notification appeared. The $7.9 billion deal her company had been negotiating, the one that would have secured its future, was gone. Cancelled. Danielle had just withdrawn every investment, every contract, every tie her empire had with Eleanor's firm. Gasps erupted across the gala. Conversations froze mid-sentence. People who had laughed moments before now stared in shock, their expressions shifting from amusement to disbelief. Eleanor's smirk faltered, her face draining of color as the realization spread. Danielle didn't gloat. She didn't need to. She simply met Eleanor's eyes and said, "Respect is earned. And tonight, you lost far more than your dignity." The silence that followed was deafening. The humiliation Eleanor had tried to inflict had boomeranged back with a force no one expected. In a single moment, Danielle had turned ridicule into retribution and left a mark on that glittering room no one would ever forget. The gala carried on, but the energy in the room had shifted forever. Those who had laughed nervously now whispered in stunned silence, their eyes darting between Danielle and Eleanor. The mockery that once filled the air had evaporated, replaced by an unspoken understanding. Power does not bow to prejudice, and dignity cannot be stripped by insult. Eleanor stood frozen, her empire shaken in a matter of seconds. The $7.9 billion deal she had counted on to secure her company's dominance had vanished because she had underestimated the very woman she tried to humiliate. Her arrogance had cost her more than business. It had cost her reputation, her influence, and the respect of those who once stood by her side. Danielle didn't linger in the chaos she left behind. She didn't raise her voice or bask in the attention. She simply walked away, her steps measured and unhurried, leaving behind a silence louder than any applause. For her, this wasn't about revenge. It was about drawing a line that said, "We will no longer endure mockery disguised as tradition, nor tolerate disrespect passed off as power."